Today, we're talking about how to master the art of pivoting when life doesn't go as planned. And y'all, let's just face the facts. All of us at some point in our lives face the unexpected. You know, we get derailed by life. Maybe a job didn't work out. You didn't get the promotion you worked so hard for. Or maybe you didn't even get the house that you wanted. Whatever it might be, we all face times in our life when we're just saying, hey, it wasn't supposed to happen this way. And as hard as it might be, we have to learn to recognize when something isn't working out. And ultimately, we have to make the hard decision to let go and pivot and be open to what's next. Now, I know that's easier said than done. And I can definitely speak from experience on this. Several years ago, in one moment, everything in our lives changed. We lost our church of 14 years, and we had moved from Houston to start this church from ground up. We started with 15 people in our living room, and 6 of those people were our little family. We went from our living room to holding 4 services in a school auditorium that, was just great. We were growing. We were excited. Everything was going good. And from there, we bought a 453,000 square foot building on 13 acres in a prime spot in Arlington, Texas. And we were elated. We were excited. We miraculously got the money for the down payment, and church began, and we had an amazing time at that church. We built a private school from the ground up. Our kids were going there, and life was good. And trust me, it was hard. It was challenging, but the rewards of God's faithfulness were exceedingly abundantly, like the scripture says. And I have to be honest with you, I loved that church. I loved those people. I looked forward to going every single week. And I was so grateful that we took that tremendous step of faith to leave Houston and just watch how God continually showed up in our lives every single day. He was so faithful. Enter the part of the story that it wasn't supposed to happen this way. Long story short is the bank called the note on our property, and in one moment, in a blink of an eye, we lost our beautiful church, and everything as we knew it ended. I can't even begin to tell you how that felt. And honestly, I was like, God, do you remember I left everything to move here and start this church? Why did this happen? I mean, you've been so faithful. I just don't get it. And beyond that, what happens next? Every thought imaginable and every question imaginable filled my thoughts. I mean, it was consuming me. And I have to tell you, I'm more of a possibility thinker than a negative thinker. Definitely. My bent is toward the positive. And thank God I quickly realized, now this is important, I quickly realized if I continued to focus on what had happened and the unfairness and the shock and the sadness, and if I would have stayed in the place of questioning why did this happen, then I know for a fact I would 100% get stuck in a moment of time. And thank God, again, I had the wherewithal to realize that if I continued down that negative route, that unfair route, it might be really hard to dig myself out of it. And I'm sure you can think of a time in your life, maybe even right now, where you've experienced those feelings that I'm talking about. And honestly, I had to just step back away from the disappointment, away from the sadness, and I just had to have a talk with God, just me and him. And it was a very simple talk, and I remember I just said, God, I don't understand this. I don't get it. It wasn't supposed to be this way. This is heartbreaking. It's shocking as well, and I just laid it all out on the table. You know, once I expressed how I felt, I have to say I felt better. It helped me come to this assessment and this acknowledgement in my life. I got to that point where I said, God, I don't get all this, but one thing I do know is that you've always been faithful in my life. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that your faithfulness doesn't stop now. Even in my questioning and my disappointments, I just had to say at this moment, God, I'm done with the questions. I'm done with all the feelings that I'm feeling inside. And I'm just trusting in you that you still have an amazing plan for our lives. Now, I just had to release it right there. It doesn't mean that those questions didn't come back, but every time those questions came back and those sad feelings came back, I just continuously released it to God. And that may seem small to you, but I have to tell you, it was life-changing for me. That burden of not understanding just lifted from me. And that burden of those unanswered questions left me. And again, I had to fight them from time to time, but at that moment, everything left me. And I say all that to say this. Sometimes we just have to get it all out to God. God, I don't get it. This wasn't supposed to be happening in my life. It wasn't supposed to be this way. You might say to him, you gave me this dream and now look, I've lost everything. Honestly, you have to go from living in a disappointed state to be content in the fact that, hey, I just have to trust that everything's going to be okay. And sure, it's a setback. You're thinking of the loss. You're thinking of all the hard work. You're thinking of the challenges that you did make it through. You're thinking of everything that you've lost or everything that didn't go completely as planned. And now you're at this place, what do I do now? I've lost everything. My life has fallen apart. Now here's a simple prayer that you can just pray to God. God, I thank you that you've been with me in every season. This is so good, y'all. You've been with me in every season. You were here with me last season in the disappointment. And I thank you that you're still with me today. I trust that you know, no matter what, that you have a plan for my life. And I pray that you give me wisdom to embrace the pivot. Lead me, direct me, guide me in my steps, my thoughts, and my actions. A simple prayer. If you're feeling like your life is falling apart, that's just something good to say to God. Just be real with him. Because you know what? It's okay to just talk to God that way. He can handle it. Just let it all out and share your feelings with him. Now, here's one of the most important things that I learned with my whole disappointment back in 2014. One key that got me through that hard time in my life. I had to embrace the pivot. And pivot simply means that you have to adapt or improve by adjusting or modifying something. Y'all, I definitely had to modify. I had to adapt to the unknown, and that's hard. I had to trust that God was going to help me each step of the way. I had to reflect on the scripture, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and don't depend on your own understandings, but in all your ways, submit yourself to him, and he will make your path straight. Now, I know you've probably heard that scripture so many times, but I really had to apply that scripture to my life. Now, trust is difficult, especially when everything that you planned in life just goes out the door. But here's what I know that I learned in that season. If I would have refused to embrace that pivot, I would have been stuck in a moment of time. I would have been trying to live off of a previous season that technically was over. And y'all, that's tough, but that's what putting your faith and trust in God really is. Now, here's the really great news. Just because that season had ended didn't mean that God didn't have another amazing season ahead. Just because one dream died doesn't mean that God doesn't have a new dream. Now, how does that play out in real time? Well, let me go back to my story. We lost our church, we lost our school, we lost a whole lot more than that I will ever even talk about in my life. But one day, soon after all this happened, I'm just in a place where I'm just kind of praying, God, I thank you for new opportunities. I didn't know what else to pray. God, thank you for new opportunities, new doors to open. I thank you for that next thing, that next new thing that you're going to do in my life. It was a simple prayer, and honestly, if I'm being really truthful, I didn't really think much about it. Do you know that not too many days went by, and I got a call from a leader of a success/motivational company, organization that had an opportunity that they wanted to present to me. This was an organization with a team of speakers, all who were experts in their field. And they traveled all over the U.S. and Canada doing motivational business success events. Now, that's a mouthful right there. And thousands attended for a day filled with amazing speakers like Les Brown and so many more. I mean, they were just experts in their field. And, if I think about it, it was kind of intimidating. And while this CEO is talking to me, I'm thinking, what does this have to do with me? And as I thought that, he began to tell me about the company and what all they did. And he wanted me to consider coming on as an inspirational speaker at each event. He said you'd have a 24 minutes time slot to inspire and motivate these business people. Man, I'm telling you, I started to get excited. I thought, this sounds great. He went on to say, now, it's not a message. You don't present scriptures. It's not a preaching time. It's an inspirational time. And I'm still thinking, this is an amazing opportunity, but too bad this isn't for me. I mean, this is actually what I thought. I thought it was a great opportunity, but in my mind, I thought, no, this isn't for me. This isn't my field. I know my crowd. I speak to churches and conferences. I'm kind of a church girl, and that's my audience. I was no doubt going to respectfully decline the offer, but when he asked me if I'd come on board, for some reason, I said yes. I was mortified. The phone call ended, and I thought, what in the world did I just agree to? I felt highly unqualified. After I hung up the phone, I immediately went over to my computer and I began trying to write an inspirational message. I'm telling you, I couldn't type fast enough. It was pouring out of me onto my keyboard, and I could hardly keep up with my thoughts and ideas that were somehow pouring into my mind. And as I was sitting there and I was writing, I sat back for a moment. And I took a look at what I was doing, and I had this epiphany. I thought, I can do this. I really can do this. This is outside of my comfort zone, but I think I can do it. And as I was sitting there, my mind just kind of hit the rewind button. And I remembered myself praying to God, God, open new doors, bring new opportunities my way. Now watch this. In the midst of one of the most difficult times of my life, God opened a door that I totally wasn't expecting, even though I prayed for that open door. And it's just amazing. I thought, April, you prayed for this opportunity. Was it easy to walk through that door? No, not really. Was I stretched completely out of my comfort zone? Oh my goodness, absolutely 100%. Did fear almost get the best of me? Yes. If I would have given in, I would have missed my pivot. I would have missed my opportunity because I would have been focusing on who I wasn't instead of on who I was destined to become. Y'all, this is why you have to make up your mind to embrace the pivot, because you can be in the right place but in the wrong state of mind and totally miss the next thing that God has in store for your life. Now, just a side note, do you know, for the next 10 months, I traveled with that company all over the U.S. and Canada, doing the very thing that I thought I wasn't qualified to do. And I probably wasn't qualified, but I showed up every single time like the person that I was destined to be. I showed up like I was qualified. I was called an expert in something. I don't even know what it was, and I just showed up as an expert. I loved it. The first time I got up there and spoke to thousands of business people, I was shaking in my boots. But you know what? They didn't know it. They didn't know as I was talking to them, inside I was telling myself, April, you can do this. They're going to love you. You're giving people hope. People's lives are going to change. You got this. I was cheering myself on and showing up as the person that God designed me to be. And it completely opened doors for me that I continue to walk in today. I blew the boundaries off of my life. I'm so grateful that I did it afraid. I'm so grateful that I just decided, you know what? They don't know I'm not qualified, but I'm going to show up like I'm qualified. I'm going to show up like I know what I'm doing. And as I did it more and more and more, I became more comfortable. Listen, y'all, pivoting doesn't require great skills. It requires you to be able to adjust and refocus and embrace change. I know that's hard, but you got to embrace it. You have to be willing to embrace something new. You've got to learn from the pain. You got to practice that resilience. You got to adapt to the new and really trust that God isn't done with you and He still has an amazing plan. See, He cares about every detail of your life, and He wants you to grow. He wants you to enlarge your dreams. He wants you to expect even greater things. So let's just make it simple. How do you pivot when life doesn't go as planned? Number one, you got to release the questions that may never be and most likely will never be answered. Oh man, I know that's hard to do, but I'm telling you from experience, you just have to release them. Those questions can hold you back. Those questions can keep you stuck in a moment of time. Secondly, you got to close the door to that season of your life. You got to stop trying to relive it. You got to stop going there emotionally. You got to stop going there mentally. Just close the door so you can enter into the next season of your life. Number three, You got to trust that God's going to show you the next step to take. You know, He may not show you the whole road. That's rarely how He works, but He will show you the next step if you're praying and asking for His guidance. Number 4, you got to stop limiting yourself. Y'all, you got to take those boundaries off that could be holding you back in life, whether it's fear, insecurity, you don't feel qualified, everything that I felt. Take the boundaries off. Take the limits off your life. Number 5, you got to put feet to your faith. You got to be brave enough to take that first step, even though you don't see the path clearly. Number 6, you got to pray and then believe in what you're praying for. God, I thank you that you have a next place, and I believe it. I'm trusting you, and I'm working toward it. The bottom line is this: we have to get good at pivoting. In fact, we should become an expert at pivoting. We have to reframe our mindset to view challenges as opportunities. Listen, when you decide that even though life may not be going as planned, you're not going to fall apart, man, you're resilient. You got this. When you do that and when you have that mindset, you're setting yourself up for transformation and for growth. You're opening yourself up to new experiences and new opportunities and unlimited possibilities. Hey, let me know down below how you've embraced a pivot in your life. And if you haven't subscribed, I would love for you to do that today. And until next time, I hope you have the most amazing day.